Good. So we're here to talk a bit about inner space. And there's two things. We're talking about the program itself, running that with young people, but also the 3-day facilitator training to use the program. So that's the focus of our talk. And many of you will have seen the background paper on inner space. Paula put it up on LinkedIn, and I've sent it to some people in Australia. But if you don't have the background paper that goes into more detail about where it came from and how it works, I'm happy to send you that. So Helen, who's on the call with us, Helen and I created Expressive Therapies Australia, and we began in 1996. We co-founded it together. We live on the north side of Brisbane, so we work together and we're a couple. And most of the time that works really well for us. Our headquarters where we run our training is in Redcliffe, Moreton Bay, for those who know the north side of Brisbane. But of course, our training courses are also offered in Singapore. And Paula, who's on the call with us, is our trainer, as well as her own person, her own trainer. She runs our course on sound play therapy and symbol work and expressive therapies with children and adolescents. And hopefully next year we'll also run the facilitated training in inner space. And we're very excited. For the first time ever, we'll be introducing the certificate in expressive therapies with adult clients in Singapore starting late April. And Paula is the one who really provides both individual and group supervision in expressive therapies and sound play. And you can see all that she does on her blog. These are our 4 main books. They describe what's behind the program, the expressive therapies activities that inform the Inner Space program. So Inner Space is the program I created based on expressive therapies activities and emotional literacy activities. And while I'm kind of going into lecture mode, if something's unclear or you've got a question or you know you've got to leave our talk, please just call out and ask your question. It's very informal and you'd be very welcome to do that. So as I said, the facilitated training is a 3-day training where, as is normal in expressive therapies, you actually experience the main elements of the program, not absolutely the whole program as your students would, but some of the core activities. And there are a few of them that are actually repeated in the program to build student awareness. I'm mostly talking about level 2, which is for students 10 to 14 years. And we also have a junior program. So really it's an 8-week program, creative arts activities. It develops emotional literacy, and we'll talk a bit about why that's good. It develops well-being, strengthens resilience, and gives young clients or participants in the group a lot of confidence. So it's really a coming together of some of the elements in my own background, my training and experience as a school teacher, teaching primary school in Australia. So the kids I was working with were between the ages of 8 and 10, 12 years old. My experience, almost 30 years as a counsellor and training in expressive therapies, ET. working with groups of children and groups of adolescents, my master's in education in behaviour management, and for about the last 20 years, I've been a counselling educator at a number of universities around Australia. And my PhD research was in multiple intelligences in counselling. And that particular theory very much influences the program. And we'll see how time goes, and I may have a chance to talk a little bit about that. But obviously, in the facilitated training, we want facilitators of the program to be comfortable with the background and the theory and why certain things are offered in the program. So really, Innerspace is a new framework. We're really aiming to help young people understand themselves, to start to work through some of the emotional difficulties that impact their behaviour and their ability to engage in learning. It helps them reflect on their behaviour. And of course, being a group program, it helps them improve communication and gain self-awareness skills. So even though it is a group program, some practitioners use some or all of it with individual clients and take them through steps and stages of the program in individual work as well. You know, there are some young people who their need is very strong to have focus just on themselves from the counsellor, and that can kind of repair some of the attachment disruption. So the facilitator training is only available in person. The level 2 is at the end of May in Queensland, and in Singapore we're introducing it in August. So there's plenty of time to think about it. So the level 2 helps kids identify their feelings, communicate about their concerns, work through issues that impact on their learning, things that impact on their behaviour, their social development and their overall well-being. And the feedback has been very strong that gives them a chance to experience very close peer bonds, which in itself for many kids is a major positive outcome. As I said, there's also a junior version of Innerspace for kids from 7 to 9 years old. And that's being offered in Australia in October and in Singapore in November. So they come later in the year.
Sorry, Mark, can I interject,
Please.
ask a question? So those close peer bonds, do they generalize out and do they endure beyond the Innerspace program once the 8 weeks are finished?
The feedback is that when it's conducted in a school where these kids are still in contact with each other, yes, very much. For those that maybe they're going to an agency that's running the program and may not see each other after the program, the facilitators have reported back that their confidence in reaching out and making contact is something that seems to carry over. So
thank you. Yeah, I was thinking from the school context, but thank you. Yeah.
Yes. So very much. It's because they're actually used to talking about things at a deeper level, if I can put it in a sort of a general way. Yeah. So the program was first developed in 2006, and it went through a few name changes. It's a weekly program. We recommend that it's conducted over 8 weeks with a 90-minute session a week. In some cases, in some schools, only 60 minutes was allowable. And so some of the activities within each session were reduced slightly. We recommend small groups. 4 to 6 is ideal. Some people have run it in groups of up to 12, but quite often with 3 facilitators. So there's an adult that can interact when the kids are talking in subgroups. And it ends with a completion review celebration session where they get a certificate of achievement for completing the course. You may have noticed some of the little cartoon creatures. There is a mascot. I think its name is Starry, but I suggest that facilitators get suggestions from the kids in the program, what they'll decide to call the star character. So it appears throughout and has a sidekick, this little bird. The colour illustration from the board is from the Student Achievement Award. So we're very grateful to our illustrator, Simon, in the UK, who's prepared the program, and I've used those as decorations on the slide. So when you do the facilitated training, you get a license to conduct the program. So the program is copyrighted, but the license grants you permission to make copies of the workbook for your students. You get a facilitator guide, and I'll go into details about what's in these things. You get a student workbook that you as the facilitator actually work on and make your own. So you get the fun that the kids get when working on the workbook, including permission to colour in. And of course, an achievement award. So you won't get the achievement award, you'll get a statement of completion and a license to conduct the program. So this is the cover of the facilitator guide. Inside the guide, there are preparation tasks, how to get ready, some background to the activities, where they come from, and these are the things we discuss in the training. There is a complete format for the program, a recommended sort of progression through different activities, and there are detailed activity scripts. I'll show you an example in a moment. There are a number of emotional literacy tools, ways that help kids expand their ability to talk about themselves and their feelings and their kind of inner world and their relating to others. There's pro formas for parent permission to participate, and there are feedback sheets for parents and for teachers so that facilitators can present to their organisation evidence on the effectiveness of the program in the context where they're running it. So this is a page from the facilitator guide. You can see there's a preliminary meeting where you talk about the aims of the program. Session 1 has 4 activities. Session 2 has 3, but also has, talking about guidelines when people are talking together. This is indirectly building social skills. Session 3 and 4 have 3 activities, which are slightly longer ones. And there's easy access in the facilitator guide, how to do it, and in the student workbook, what page does it relate to. So here's page 24. I just randomly copied this in. So this is session 2, activity A. So the first thing we're doing in the student workbook, there is a page called Bad Times, Good Times, what's going on inside. There's a rationale you can read out to the students, like, why are we doing this? What's it about? And then a script you can see with the instructions that the facilitator can practice. And of course, facilitators who get confident in running the program often, change the wording or modify it to suit the kids that they're working with. So that's a little bit about the facilitator guide. As I said before, if you've got any questions at any time, please call out. This is sort of one of my things I'm most excited about at the moment is so until this year, we were using a version of the student workbook entirely created by myself with no artistic flair whatsoever. And Simon has redesigned the workbook. There are 23 pages in the workbook, and it's the place where, there might be a visualization activity, and then the kids will go to the workbook and draw in it or write in it. There might be a movement activity where we're running around the room, we're doing some stretches, and then we're doing a calm down or a cool down. And the kids will express in the workbook maybe some colours and lines, how that felt. So they're kind of recording their experiences as they go along. The sort of first page of the workbook enables them to kind of make it their own. They do a little sketch in this. There's time in the very first session, maybe a sketch of themselves, or one of their favourite things. It's amazing how often a dog or a cat appears in this little framework, and we encourage them to start the whole colouring in. One of the things we've learned is that kids, won't be a big surprise, work at different speeds with the activities and expressing themselves in the workbook. So the idea is, if you finished and others are not yet finished, you can start colouring in or decorating or working further on the workbook. So here's a typical page, page 18. This is an activity, what my body tells me. Some of you who've done training with Paula or myself or with Helen will be familiar with body outlines. This activity involves them tuning into themselves, expressing on the outline, keeping a record of the colours they used, and some discussion questions. So they might get into groups of 3 or 4, or even pairs, talk about the activity. So there's this constant movement between tuning in and enhancing self-awareness, then expressing their personal experience onto the workbook, and then having the experience of listening to others and being heard by others. And this dramatically increases their sense of inclusion and being part of the group. And because they've worked on the page, their ability to communicate about their experience is very much enhanced. And in the student workbook, in the back few pages, we've got a number of emotional literacy tools, feeling word lists, texture words, texture images, and invitations for them to think about texture words and images. There are pages where using as examples of different kinds of lines, like straight lines or curvy lines, to build up a number of different ways they can start to describe their emotional experience, their feeling about things in the world, about themselves, about their life. And in the final session, they get their achievement award. I wanted to make this as Gary as possible and bright. And it comes where school or agency can insert their own name and maybe even logo here, and of course put the student's name in. So that's the Student Achievement Award. So when you do the facilitated training, the 3-day training, your statement of attendance is also a license to conduct the program. The license is not transferable. And although the student workbook has copyright on it, this grants you the right to make copies to use with groups that you're working with. So, any questions so far?
I've got a basic one. I asked lots of questions, Mark.
Great.
What you're doing the older age group first. How come that way around? Is it just a matter of interest, curiosity?
This is the one we have the most evidence base for.
Okay.
And which I'll talk about in just a moment.
Okay.
The junior one is still, we've had really good feedback on it, but we're hoping more people will trial it. And Jen, I'm kind of looking at you when I say that, because Jen works with the younger kids, right? Yeah.
Mark, sorry, Melissa, have you finished your question?
Yeah, so your evidence, is it quantitative? It's not, is it Qualitative, anecdotal, or sorry, Mark, when you say there's more evidence, is it
Yeah, a bit of everything.
studies? Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Heading towards it soon. Jen.
Hi. I wanted to ask, so being in primary school, I'm kind of getting the very bottom tail end of the first group, but probably the majority of the second group that's going to get run in October. Would it be necessary to do the both, or should I aim for the younger one in October and build it up a little bit if I was to deliver it to the older cohort being in primary school? We go from P to 6, and oldest age in grade 6 would be 11 and a half, 12-year-olds.
Yeah. You know, I think that might be a conversation for you and I to spend a bit more time on, because I'm not getting a very clear and distinct answer in my mind, because I need to know a bit more about the kids. Are they ones with significant behavior problems, for example? You know,
yeah, I'm thinking like my schools currently are very low SES. There's a lot of kind of like cognitive impairments, and the 2 schools that I work with currently, they'd probably be choosing some of the lower cohorts. So in my mind, I'm thinking do the October one, and I could probably aim it for the older group rather than the other way around. But happy to talk with you offline and separately around that.
Let's have another conversation about that.
Yeah.
Got a few ideas that might be useful.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else have a comment or question or anything you'd like me to say more about at this stage? No?
Mark?
Yes.
Okay, because I noticed this will be mostly applied in the school. But unfortunately, in France, what I noticed is that school counselor is a non-assist. So could this be applied in a group for the group of children that coming from different school?
Yes. Yes.
It's like a private practice. If they come in and they group it together, but they do not know each other.
That's fine. Yeah, they actually get to know each other quite quickly. Yeah. So when it's run in an agency, it's more like what you're describing, where the kids don't know each other. And the first session is very much focused on getting to know each other and starting to feel safe. So yes, definitely work there. It doesn't depend on them knowing each other. But as I was saying to Melissa earlier, if it is conducted in a school, there is more opportunity for them to continue those close connections they made in the group time, you know, beyond the group itself once the group's over. Yes. So what is Innerspace about? It's based on the theory of expressive therapies. And I guess one of the fundamental theories behind expressive therapies, as the name suggests, is expression. It's kind of making ourselves known, trying to understand ourselves, putting something out, you know, whether that's colors and lines or statements or movements or body postures. And that in itself has a kind of calming or venting impact. As I mentioned, multiple intelligence theory, this idea that we have basically 8, possibly 9 different clusters of abilities. You know, it used to be similar to the idea of learning theory, that some people are visual learners, some are more auditory learners. Multiple intelligence, which comes from researchers at Harvard University, found that people have certain capacities which they prefer and are kind of natural strengths to them. For example, for some people, expressing themselves with colors and lines and shapes and pictures works really well. For others, they may be really good with words. And So each activity touches into a number of these clusters of abilities. So it's highly likely that a range of kids with different abilities can participate. So it's not all language-based, or it's not all requiring them to be able to speak really well. It's about developing self-awareness. Our whole culture is about turning out, facing outward. What are we supposed to be doing? Schools specialize in that. It's wonderful to hear in Australia anyway. I know that there's much more focus on well-being, and part of that well-being is to kind of get to know signals from our body, for example. And so there's a lot of activities that help the participants actually sort of focus in on themselves. It strengthens their ability to communicate and articulate their experiences. It enhances their emotional literacy, understanding emotions, being able to talk about them and understand them. It definitely increases pro-social behaviour. And the structure of the program, really, the idea of listening to others and not interrupting is really important. Jen, yeah.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for noticing that. I just wanted to ask, I've just transferred from a school out in the Ripley Valley to a school within Springfield Lakes, and we've got an extremely high population of EALD. English is not their first language. So you mentioned that this is kind of bimodal with regard to being able to deliver it to students that might not have English as their first language. And we actually have some students that speak no language at all that have come in from refugee camps. Can you kind of tease that out a little bit as to what kind of might be the parameters around the delivery for that program within that space?
Good, thank you. There needs to be enough language which the facilitator is going to use to present the program to understand what they're being asked to do, in terms of, are they being asked to picture something in their mind? Are they being asked to read a little story in the workbook? However, their responses can be primarily with colours and lines, shapes or pictures. Yep. And that's very much encouraged. And what people have found is that that really helps. But I would say if there's no language in common, it's not going to work. Yeah.
Okay, good to know. Excellent. Thank you so much.
Good. The reports are, and my experience working with these activities with kids, it really supports their sense of self or their self-esteem, increases peer bonding, and it's activity-based. So there will be short periods where kids are maybe sitting and talking with each other, but what they're talking about is their experience of an activity, or perhaps they're showing each other what they've done in the workbook. So there's something that they're looking at together. So, and the structure of each session always involves something with movement, something maybe with quiet and stillness, sort of not 90 minutes of the same kind of activity. Some of you will be here with me for 90 minutes listening to me ramble on, perhaps. I understand if everyone can't stay the whole time, but kids will actually be doing lots of different things, not just listening. The modalities that make up the activities, self-awareness activities, the self-discovery worksheet pages. So there are things on the worksheet that give structure and guide their reflection. There's expressive art, there's completion art, and you'll find out what they are in the facilitator training. There's therapeutic writing, where, for one example, would be some sentence starters that are kind of like catalysts for their thinking, their thought, their recollection, and they can respond with a word or two. They can respond with different kinds of lines or colours. As built into the program is as many options as possible in ways they respond. I mentioned the emotional literacy tools. Some of those are words. Some of them is like a whole page of different kind of lines. Suggestions for using colours to express themselves. There's a page of shapes. There's use of music and textures. So a whole lot of different ways to build their understanding, their articulation and communication about themselves. There's lots of metaphor and role play. One of my favourite activities is where the kids are invited to imagine themselves as a beautiful sunset. It's a little kind of relaxation, tuning in activity. Then they get to draw the sunset, which of course simultaneously is a drawing of themselves and how they felt in the activity. The program incorporates bioenergetics, which are physical movement activities and some stretches and stress positions that actually start to reduce tension in the body. And some of them are very silly and some of them are very fun. So kind of a warning to facilitators. Sometimes we feel maybe a bit goofy in presenting the program, which is why we get to do it and go through that embarrassment in the facilitator training, so that we can really present it in a playful way with confidence. And of course, as I've mentioned, there's visualization and relaxation modalities in the program. So there's a lot of different ways it can be applied in group work, and we call it a group work program. But also it's really successful helping kids reflect and explore and understand themselves, and particularly in situations where they really blossom with that one-on-one focus from a counsellor or welfare person, or maybe a behaviour management worker in the school. A lot of when we first released the program, probably 75% of the people who did the facilitator training were school guidance officers on the east coast of Australia, mostly in Queensland. We've had teachers work with the activities in the classroom in situations where wellbeing and self-care were part of their curriculum. Learning support teachers have found that not necessarily using the whole program, but using aspects of it kind of clears the way for clearer and better learning. It's been used by teacher aides in school. We've had chaplains train in the program and use it. In welfare agencies, quite often social workers or psychologists in the agency will use this framework in group work or individual work, and of course counsellors in private practice. So these are some of the applications of the program. So Melissa, we're coming to the evidence base now. So most of our quantitative and qualitative evidence comes from Anna Zichtman, who researched through, it's just gone out of my head which university, did a major research paper on inner space level 2. She found that increases emotional literacy, decreases overall student difficulties, and she noticed increases in student pro-social behaviour. And these were observations from herself as the program facilitator, but extensive feedback from parents and teachers in the school. There's a bit more detail in the background paper. As I mentioned, if you don't have that, I'm very happy to send it to you. Also, the program was developed over a couple of years with 2 teams of advisors. Is Lindy still with us? Yes, you are. Lindy, you were one of our advisors and gave us feedback ever so long time ago from Victoria. So these advisors worked in schools or agencies, private practice, special education. They were behaviour management. Some were counsellors, some were art therapists, some were guidance officers. And they all did the facilitated training and generously shared their feedback. Some of the photographs I have of student work, obviously from the earlier version, with the earlier graphics of the program, comes from these advisors. So there was a lot of modification and clarification over a 3-year period. Also, in terms of expressive arts, they've found that reflective expressive arts activities can really enhance self-awareness and communication. That's not a finding directly from Innerspace, but from the application of expressive arts that generate self-reflection. Expressive therapies itself contributes to the resolution of emotional problems. And we know that peer group rapport building improves positive social relationships. And that is one of the strong findings and incidental observations from facilitators, that the rapport building was really impressive. I've got a quote for you on that in a minute. And this rapport building then contributes to overall well-being. And so the original researchers back in '99 who were studying, what really contributes most to well-being, both in young people and adults, felt that connection with others was one of the most important elements. As I said, the program incorporates multiple intelligence theory, which was proposed by Gardner. And myself and some colleagues have published research on the impact of that in counselling settings. So not specifically on Innerspace, but on the type of activities that are incorporated into this program. And the program uses the practical activities of expressive therapies, modified in a way that they're not, we're not conducting therapy in the program. Sorry, did someone have a question? I know it's pretty hard to get a word in once I get going, but please don't hesitate. I'm just aware of our time, and if we can get through this fairly quickly and give you a taste. So if we can support students to process emotional difficulties, so these are some of the researchers who found that working through emotional difficulties really changes behaviour, it changes ability to pay attention in general, but particularly in class. It increases social connectedness and dramatically increases self-worth. Also, we're very strong, and we spend a fair bit of time in the facilitator training on the ideal facilitator relational style. We look at some of the research that's been found about, what are the most effective facilitators, what are the least effective in terms of conducting group work, and do our best to discuss and kind of inculcate that way. Kind of similar to Carl Rogers' person-centered approach to counselling and group work. And we, of course, incorporate our understanding of the literature from counselling and psychotherapy outcome research that has shown over and over the incredible value of relationships as one of the core ingredients of successful outcomes in psychotherapy and counselling. And overall, we know that group counselling, and some people call Innerspace group counselling, is a powerful and valuable experience in schools. So just really citing Anna Ziegterman's research, she reports that the relaxed environment and the socially supportive situation within a regularly meeting small group may have met needs for love and belonging, safety and self-esteem that in turn enhance students' ability to demonstrate scholarly social behaviour, her words. And this was observed widely and positively by the teachers of the kids in the program she was researching. You know, this reminds us, of course, of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the way the group's conducted, and hopefully the safety that's generated by the group helps them kind of reach higher levels of the hierarchy. I mentioned a few times emotional literacy, defined as the ability to recognise, understand, handle, and appropriately express emotions. It's really developed through the program. It's one of the aims of the program. And the research shows that learning emotional literacy is largely a social, hence group work program may provide ideal conditions for its development. It's very hard to develop emotional literacy alone, because it's really about reading self and reading others in terms of their mood and the cues we pick up from others. And these researchers found that actually emotional literacy is a core ingredient in generating positive outcomes from school programs. So we've got that built in. I'm going to stop talking for a moment and let you read the screen. So he preferred that I didn't use his name. He works with Education Queensland. It reminds me of a story of another behaviour consultant working in a school who offered the program, and after the first offering the program to kids with fairly extreme behaviour challenges, and found that after the program got going, there was a delegation of kids who didn't necessarily have any identified behaviour problems saying it wasn't fair. Why should the naughty kids get to have all this fun and they miss out? And so they actually, this principal of the school allowed them to widen it so that actually it was all of year 7 in this school. All the subclasses of year 7 got to go through the whole of Innerspace because they found such positive outcomes. So I've mentioned a few times the background paper. Paula put it up on LinkedIn. I guess they can still find it there, Paula. I can hardly ever find anything twice on LinkedIn or Facebook myself, but I'm sure there are ways. But anyway, if you've got Paula's contacts, you can ask her or ask me, and I'll send you the paper with more details on the background. So I'm getting close to the things that I wanted to share, but I just thought for those who might be thinking about doing the facilitator program, these are our training rooms in Redcliffe in Queensland. Try and make things fairly colourful, and you can see our shelves of miniatures, which we use just a little bit in Innerspace. We've been, what shall I say, modest in using the symbol work, because a lot of situations where people want to run it, they don't have access to miniatures. And also I have some pictures of Paula's rooms the gentle art of expressive therapy in Singapore with people in action studying expressive therapies. And guess what, January? You're on mute, but you're here in the picture.
Sorry, I'm just having my dinner.
That's all
Am I
right.
there somewhere?
No, I was saying
the other
January.
Jen. The other Jen.
January.
Oh,
Hello, Mark. I think, oh, am I? I'm sorry. I think it was a technical fault.
That's all right. I'm just pointing out that you're heroically in the pictures that, of course, everyone gave us permission to use. Do you want to tell everyone what we were doing in the picture on the right? Do you remember?
I think we're doing some bioenergetic work.
That's right. So in the middle picture, we're doing a tug of war with towels, and Paula was taking the group through a series of bioenergetics. So expressive therapy is pretty fun, really. Yes. Anyway, so these are the two main locations where we run the training. In Australia, you can download the detailed flyer from our website. If you're in Singapore, you can go to gentleart.blog. All the info is there where you can register and pay. You're very welcome to join our mailing list on our website and get forever updates. We do about 3 or 4 newsletters a year, which have short articles as well as, telling you what's upcoming in our courses and trainings. So I think that's it. Yes. That is me finished talking. So this is potential Q&A. Is there anything I said that you'd like to hear a bit more about? If you feel like, great, I've got a sense of what it's all about, thank you so much. Don't feel you've got to hang around. Thank you for being such great listeners.
Mark, I've got a question for you. The people ask me, so
Yes.
I'm going to sort of just ask you, and you can do the answering for this one.
Okay.
Parents. How do you
Yes.
involve parents in this? Do you involve parents in the very beginning, at the end? How do you give feedback to parents? Especially if you're working in schools, you have to get permission from parents to come in.
Exactly. So in the facilitator guide, there is a pro forma that kind of sums up the program that you would use to seek parental permission. And there is also a feedback sheet inviting them to give you feedback on what they notice. So that's two main ways they're involved, beginning and end. But we also, and we talk about this in the facilitator training, obviously inviting parents to give us feedback as we go along through the program. It's wonderful if parents ask, what can they do to help? Is there anything they can do? We've got proactive parents, and we have a whole list of stuff that we suggest, very gentle activities that kind of support the program from home. Christy, yes.
Hi, I had two questions, please. One is, if I wasn't going to run it sort of in a therapeutic, so I work in a school as a counsellor, but I'm thinking rather than running it during school time, perhaps with children who've been identified as benefiting from this, if it's possible for me to run it as an after-school activity over the 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And then sort of tagging onto that, in the facilitator's guidebook, is there content, or, if we wanted to email parents after each session about what we did in that session, just so they have an update?
Okay. No, there isn't in the facilitator guide, but I think it's an interesting idea. One of the things we kind of want to do, because the activities are inviting kids to, you know, tap into their feelings, and which, you know, may be quite positive, but maybe not all the time. We slightly want to protect them from an inquisition at home after the program. So, you know, one of the things we often say is, if parents really want to support their kids, it's to be curious and welcome them to share about what happened in the program. And if they don't want to talk about it, leave it be, not force it. Yeah. Anything more on that, Christy?
No, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah. You know, after school in Australia would not be a good time to do it, because kids want to get going and play and run about and go wild. I know it's timing and structure of the day is different in Singapore, and that there are lots of activities kids do after school. We can't say there is direct evidence that it will improve their academic performance, but we certainly know when kids feel more relaxed, you know, more at home in themselves, feel understood, they actually can pay better attention and learn better. You know, there may be an angle there that would be interesting for kids, in terms of, you know, I've heard over and over from our students in Singapore that, you know, academic performance is, you know, extremely important in many family cultures. So be good to draw a line there, but we can't say for sure.
Thank you.
Chats. I don't run the training in Victoria, but I love to travel. So, and I'll be doing a few trips to Singapore this year, so going somewhere else as well would be great. So, yeah. Oh yes, Helen's answered you already. Thank you. I'm really waiting. I would really like to run this training in the south of France. So
I'll come and carry the luggage. I'll be the porter. I'm in.
I think my partner Helen will probably have first sort of
damn.
offering to be my companion in such things.
Mais je peux parler français alors. Qu'est-ce que vous voulez?
Oh, that's very, very impressive. I still remember proudly my first time in Paris, trying out my high school French and congratulating myself on being able to read some signs and go, this is going to be great. And French people just looking at me without any, just nothing, just complete blank. So, yeah. But, you know, also haven't been to the north of Spain yet. So there's lots of places where we're willing to run our courses. There's a long way of answering that question. We had a trainer for many years running our programs. She ran Innerspace down in Victoria, but unfortunately she's no longer with us. So it's not an option at the moment. Okay. Great. So anything else I should talk about?
Mark, I'm trying to get my head around. I think I need to talk to you also about doing it with the younger cohort first.
Yes.
So I work as a school counselor in 2 primary schools, and I work individually with individual students, and at the moment my kind of preferred therapeutic approach is play therapy. So a lot of play-based therapy. And
Right.
as much of it, I make it non-directive. So I think I'm guessing the facilitator makes the program their own within the parameters of the, okay.
Yeah.
And that relationship would make all the difference, this kind of
Exactly.
sense of fun and play and
Yeah.
acceptance, unconditional positive regard, and that. Because I have to be honest, I'm not from a teacher background. So the moment I see a workbook, I kind of think, ah. So,
Yes.
but I think I definitely could work
Yes.
with it. I need to look at doing groups and being more
Yes.
flexible in that regard.
Yes. So the junior workbook is not fully designed by our illustrator yet. But I'd be very happy to do a little session on the junior level. So, you know, that might interest you, Jen, as well, and talk about it. But indeed, a lot of people have used the junior one as incidental and not as a program as such. And also in that situation, how long can the kid that you're working with pay attention? And maybe we do half an activity and then we run around the room like wild horses together. And then we come back and think about step 2. And then we have a stretch and pretend we're a cat dozing off to sleep. Then we come back to step 3. So there's lots of options to build your own creativity and timing into the application. I mean, this applies to the level 2 one as well. But as we're talking, I think, well, I'll put on another talk like this about the junior one, even though I don't yet have the beautiful art stuff, and we can talk about. So it's very graphics based. So rather, it's got some words in it, but there's lots of, like, a whole page of pictures, and you put circles around 2 that go together or are linked in some way, that kind of thing. So yeah,
that sounds great.
suitable.
Thank you.
Looking forward to it.
Right.
I typically find, Mark, when I'm running programs like this in the demographic area that I work in, that they throw me every undiagnosed ADHD, unmedicated ADHD student. And so I'm pleased to hear that it's limited to 4, because I've had groups of 8 in a room before. And it's almost been to the demise of my career. I've almost gone, right, I'm out. That's it. I'm not doing this anymore.
Yep.
So, yeah, getting some parameters around that and helping when we're selecting the cohort of student that this is tailored for, to have those clear parameters around what are we actually aiming this program at, who is, and more specifically, who is not an ideal candidate for this program. So it was good to see that in the beginning of it all. Like,
yes.
I think in a lot of programs that's really missing. So just wanted to say thank you.
Yes.
And really interested to find out a bit more about that for my little group of kiddies that I work with.
So we had someone who used Innerspace several times and was contracted to come into a school to run it, and found that she, despite what she'd said, she had a group of, I think it was somewhere between 8 and 12 of all the most extreme behavior problem kids from different classes and different ages. And she quickly realized that her job was actually babysitting to relieve the teachers of these difficult students. And of course, it was a terrible failure, because what she came to was not what she was offering. It was a mixed match. So, if you had more than 4 students, you would definitely have to have 2 facilitators. So you've got, and particularly with kids with extreme behavior problems who just cannot sit still. And you need someone to be able to sit with them, and pat their shoulder and say, now, what are you doing? And let's have another look. Whereas someone else keeps the group going as a whole, because you're also more likely to get participants with different speeds.
Yeah, totally. Like, you get so many kind of types of students across, even across 1 grade or even 2 grades, where you're kind of limiting the beginning and the end, the butt ends of the age group. You still can get
Yes.
such a vast array of student development and ability for that. So, yeah, and I think that's really key when you're pitching this to your leadership teams or your deputy principals or, you know, the hierarchy around the program. You need to have those very strict and firm boundaries around what it is this group is aiming for, because it is not or should not be a babysitting thing. So
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
Great. Is it Fuyin? I'm sorry, I can't remember your pronunciation. You had a question?
My question has been answered about the ADHD, the difficult behavior.
Yeah. I mean, if you're running a group and you've got kids with ADHD, you need to know when their medication was. Is it to be delivered when they leave your room? You know, it's not really funny, but I've had reports of people who've kind of been inundated with kids who just aren't able to participate.
But it is kind of funny too, Mark, because I've been in that situation, like just 8 adolescent grade 4 boys, unmedicated, undiagnosed, bouncing around in my room. And I have almost had to walk out and go, I'm done. I'm not doing this. So, yeah.
In the facilitate, sorry.
Having those strict boundaries around what is this program targeted for, what's the demographic, what's pedagogy that we're looking at, you know, is really important.
Yeah. In the facilitated training, we talk about what do we do if we've decided or we're following the program and it starts with something quiet and everyone's just been at soccer practice and they're high and they're bouncing around. We're going to talk about how do we pivot and meet them in a way without needing to say, now quieten down, like to just meet with them exactly as you would, Melissa, in play therapy, of course. But also in the facilitator guide, there's half a dozen extra activities that are not built into the program as such for those kind of circumstances. Or if you use one of the activities and everyone gets through it very quickly and you feel like, oh, we've done the program and it's only 60 minutes, what will I do for half an hour? You turn to page whatever it is, 35, and there are some suggestions. So these are the contingencies that we talk about in the facilitated training. Wow, what is it? It's 8:10 in Australia. So what, 6:10 in Singapore?
And time for croissant in France. I'm still green with envy.
Well, I think now finally there's some sun and is about 3 degrees outside.
Oh, wow. Actually, that sounds really good. It's so hot and humid here in Brisbane. And do you have croissants every morning now you're in France?
Well, not really.
No. Shocking.
When you have like every 100 meters, you have a bakery and then selling the same thing.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all. Feel free to send me an email, make contact, or if any questions pop up, happy to spend time. And I will organise a presentation on the junior one for those who are particularly interested, or even if mildly curious. And we'll talk about how similar and how different it is. But maybe that's enough for tonight. Okay.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you.
Lovely to see you all and good luck. And hopefully we'll see you in the facilitated training. That'd be great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
I will be there.
That's great.
Yeah. Please come to Europe.
Yes, you organise it, we'll come. You get to do the course for free. Okay.
Yeah,
I
Mark
think
and
I
I would be
need
fighting over who goes to France first.
I need to do some
How's your
quality
French,
control with
Paula?
you, Mark, I think.
Sorry?
I need to do some quality control with you, I think.
Do you?
Good
Yeah.
night, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, good night. Good night. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You have a good
Thank you.
day.
Bye.